We continue today with the 15th chapter of the book of Shmuel. Yesterday, well, he may not have fully forgiven him. David sees Avshalom, kisses him, and with that, at least David has seen him, and maybe there is a partial forgiveness. And we're told after that, Vayhi me'acharechein, first verse of chapter 15. Vayaslo Avshalom merkava v'susim v'chamishim ish ratzim lifanav. Avshalom made himself a chariot and horses and 50 people who ran in front of him, a whole entourage, a whole retinue. It's like, reminds me of that, Coming to America, when King Joffrey Joffer, or whatever his name was, would show up. Vishkim Avshalom, well, the rose petals and all that. V'yamad al yaderech hashar v'yikolish asher yellow riv lavo al melech b'mishpat v'yikrav shalom elav v'yomer eni ze yirata v'yomer me'achat shiftei Yisrael avdecha. And Avshalom would go up early in the morning. He'd go by the city gates, and whenever somebody had judgment, Avshalom would come to him and he'd say, "What town are you from?" And when the person answered him, he would say, "Your servant is from such and such tribe of Israel." So, right, person would say, "I'm from here, and I'm from the tribe of Dan. I'm from the tribe of Asher. I'm from the tribe of Binyamin." And then Avshalom in verse 3 would say back to him, "Vayamar Avshalom, re'ei dvarecha tovim u'nechochim v'shomea ein lecha me'et hamelech." Avshalom would then say something to this person. He would say, "Oh, what you said sounds very correct. That's a very, your case, what you want to speak to the king about sounds very much right. But the king doesn't want to hear you. The king's not interested in justice." If you remember, the king, we've said this a couple of times over the last chapter, right? He has to lead them more, and he has to be the shofet. He has to judge them. And Avshalom may believe truly that David doesn't want to judge properly because David didn't do anything about the rape of his sister, and really didn't do anything much about his killing, Avshalom's own killing of Amnon. Continuing verse 4, Vayamar Avshalom, mi simeni shofet ba'aretz. And Avshalom would go on, "If only I were the judge of the land. And, people would come to me with them, they had dispute, and I would make sure that everything was fine." And now Avshalom shows that he was a great politician. When people would bow down to him because they understand that he's the prince, maybe the crown prince, he would extend his hand, he would kiss them, he was kissing the babies. Avshalom at Leiv Anshe Yisrael. And Avshalom did this with all of the people who came to see the king. This was his act. This is what he did constantly. And in this way, he managed to really demonstrate to the people that he was the person that they wanted to be king, and they started to love him. He stole their hearts with his beautiful words. And now it's 40 years have gone by. Now, this is not 40 years of Avshalom doing this. For those who say it means 40 years from the beginning of David's reign, that means we're in towards the latter part of David's reign. It can't really be 40 years because we know that David only reigns for 40 years. But 40, we've pointed out many, many, many times, represents a generation. In the Tanakh, 40 years in the desert, 40 days of the flood. Moshe's 80 years old. He has 2 lives, right? He's the Egyptian prince, and he's the Midianite shepherd. So 40 represents the idea of a generation, right? So it's like, David, your time is coming to the end. And Absalom says, "Can I go to Hebron? I made an oath there, and which means that I said that I was going to offer sacrifices, and I need to fulfill my oath." Now, why he needs to go to Hebron is a little bit strange, because we know the temple is not at this point in Hebron. The temple has been moved to Jerusalem. So why does Avshalom need to go to Hebron to do this? I don't know. That's a good question, and we don't have a great answer to that question. But presumably, he's just trying to set something up. He's trying to, trick people, trick King David. And so he says he's going to Hebron, where David, of course, was king for a short period of time. Because I made an oath when I returned from Geshur that if God brings me back to Jerusalem, and now I'm back and I'm here with you, then I will serve the Lord. I will worship you. That is to say, I will bring sacrifice. And the king says, "Go in peace." And Avshalom went to Hebron. This is the second time that Avshalom has asked the king for permission to go somewhere. The first time he asked the king permission to go somewhere, he ended up going to have his brother, the raper of his sister, killed. So So David should be a little bit more
Like the sound sometimes.
of Avshalom and of Avshalom's intentions. That might be a better thing for David to be. But he says, Lech b'shalom, go in peace. He thinks everything between the two of them is all fine. And he sends spies throughout all the territories of Israel, and he says, when you hear the sound of the shofar, then just know that Avshalom is king in Hebron. That Avshalom alchu 200 ish miYerushalayim kurim v'olchim letumam v'lo yadu kol davar. And 200 men of Jerusalem accompany Avshalom, and they didn't know anything. They thought they were going with the king's son to go and to offer sacrifices. Vayishlach Avshalom et Achitofel hagiloni yoetz David meiro migilo b'zavcho et hazvachim vayakesher amitz va'am holech v'rav. At Avshalom. And Avshalom also sent for Achitophel the Gilonite, Achitophel from Gilo, who's David's counselor. And we'll find out that Achitophel is considered the wisest of all men of the generation. And things are starting to gain strength, right? He's got people with him. He's going to send word. He's got one of the great advisors. And his numbers start increasing. And David is told that the loyalty of Israel has veered from you towards Avshalom. And David understands immediately that there is a serious problem. David understands right now that they need to get out of the city, because if they don't, Avshalom is going to act treacherously. He's going to kill them. David understands who his son is, and understands his plot is against him, and says, we need to get rid of the city. And the servants say, whatever you say, king, we will go with you. And David leaves behind 10 concubines in the house, and everybody else leaves and goes into exile. And the king left, and all the people, and they stopped at the last house. They stopped Merachot. It sounds like they looked back. Ay lanu, what has happened to us? Where are we? They're at the edge of the town, and they're looking back at David's kingdom, which has lasted for all of these years. And all his followers marched past him, including the Kreti and the Pleti, or sort of either, according to the Midrash, it means sort of it means the Urim Tumim, in a more understanding sort of, it means like the slingers of arrows is understood as being more of a shot. And David here has 600 men again. If you remember, when he was wandering, trying to escape Shaul, at times he had 400 men, and at other times he has 600 men. So he's back down to 600 men after being king of Israel. And David approaches one of the people who are with him, Ittai the Gittite, and he says to him, why are you coming with us? Go back and stay with the king. By the king here, he doesn't mean himself. He means the new king. He means the son of Absalom. For you're a foreigner and you're an exile from your country. Tmol boacha v'hayom aniyecha. You only came yesterday. Should I make you a wanderer? Lalecha v'ani olech al asher ani olech shuv v'ashev et achecha imach chesed ba'emet. I can't go. I have to run around. But you go back with your men and act in truth, faithfulness. So David here says to one of the people who wanted to come with him, you don't have to come with me. That's not the idea right now. You should not exile yourself. That's not what you should go. You should go back home. And Vayanitai et hamelech vayomar chai Adonai v'chai Adonai hamelech ki b'makom asher yasham Adonai hamelech im lamavet im l'chaim ki sham yeh avdecha. And Ittai says, I am with you 100%. I swear by God, wherever you go, I'll go. If it means my death, so be it. That's where your servant will be. And David said, then go. And Ittai and all of his men, they marched back. Right? And here what's happening is Ittai is saying to David, what he's saying to him is, no matter where I am with you. I am fully with you. I am fully following you. I am your servant. And I will continue to stand up for you no matter what happens. That's what Ittai here says to David at this point in time. time. He's saying to David, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying, I am still with you. I'm united with you. You don't have to worry. So yes, I'll go where you're telling me to go, but I'm not going. You don't have to worry. I'm still with you. We're in verse 23. Now, everybody's crying as David's leaving from the Kidron Valley and the troops are crossing. People realize, look what happened. This was our king for so many years and now he's gone. And Sadok, the Kohen, appears with all the Levites and they're carrying the ark and they set down the ark until all the people finish marching out, and Evyatar, the two Kohanim we've mentioned in the past, Sadok and Evyatar, are with them. And the king says to Tzadok, no, you're doing too much. You cannot bring the ark out of its place. The Aron, the ark, needs to stay in Jerusalem where it belongs, and that's where it's going to be, and that's okay. Do not bring the ark out. That is not the wise thing to do. And if God sees that I am fit to come back, then I will come back and I will once again see the ark, see God, see its place. But if God says, I've had enough of you, then God should do with me as he pleases. God has done well for me. And David recognizes, of course, and it seems right, he knows that this is all a result of the sin of Bathsheba, where he was told that there's somebody who's going to rise up from his own house. We're in verse 27. And so he said to Tzadok, do you understand? Go safely back to the city, and your two sons, Achimaaz and Evyatar's son Yehonatan, should go back with you. But I'm going to stay near in the wilderness. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to run away all the way. And I'm going to wait for word. Come and, give me some word as to what is or isn't happening. So I will know how I should or shouldn't act. And so David here realizes, right? He's telling the ark, you should stay there. You shouldn't go any further. But David understands and he knows that David knows that he's trying to get word. He's getting people who are going to be in Jerusalem who are going to be on his side. So Tzadok and Evyatar, they go back with the ark. And David goes up the slope of the Mount of Olives. So we know the Har HaZeitim, that's where David's going. And David is crying, and everybody's walking bare feet. They're in mourning, and all the people with him are covering their heads, and they're crying. And David is told that amongst the people, the conspirators, is Achitophel. And David offers a prayer. He says, please, God, ruin Achitophel's counsel. David knows Achitophel is a very wise man, and therefore he wants his counsel ruined. As David's going up, he sees another person, Hushai, the Archite, who was there to meet him. And Hushai, his clothing is torn, and he's dust on earth on his head. He puts signs of mourning. And David says, I know you want to show me your kindness, that you're with me, but if you come, it's only going to be more of a burden. But if you go back to the city, David says, if you go back to the city, to Hushai, go back and you can mess with what Achitophel's plans are. You can somehow figure out a way that he is not going to be able to destroy me, go and ruin his plan. So first David asks God to help with the plans of Achitophel, and now David does a second thing, which he said he actually sends somebody to go and ruin the plans, right? You can't just wait, you can't just rely on the miracles. And we're up to verse 35. And he says, and anything that you hear, report to Tzadok and Evyatar the Kohanim. They are on my side. And they have two men with them, their sons. Right, Tzadok and Evyatar, the Kohanim, they can't leave, but their sons can leave and they can report back to me. And Hushai, the friend of David, is returning to the city, and as is Avshalom is going back as well to the city, to Jerusalem. And so we see here, without much blood spilled, it appears at this point that Avshalom has usurped the throne. There's a coup, and David realizes he needs to get out of the city. David understands that his life is in danger, and David goes and disappears, and we'll see what happens next. Avshalom has a lot of people with him. He's stolen the heart of Israel, but David still has some people who are with him and some people who are spying on Avshalom for him.